Well, good morning, Nancy. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Nancy's on our lead team here at the church and oversees our intercession and helps me with deliverances and helped. We co-taught a class for 8 weeks together.
I appreciate just being able to share what the Lord gives me, because when you said welcome home, I did feel like it was home again. And
Oh,
yeah, that was good.
I forgot that I'd said that. You know what?
Yeah.
That's funny because we're doing the Jesus Revolution video, and one of the scenes that struck me was when young Greg Laurie goes to church for the first time. Had never gone, as far as I know, and
Right.
a bunch of hippies, and he comes into the crowded room, and some girl greeter hugs him and says, "Welcome home." Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you come from.
I do remember running home from a good news club that was on the college campus of King's College, where my parents were going to college. And I was 3 years old, and I was so excited. I accepted Jesus in my heart. I was just, and it was just like overflowing. So I do have a sense that Jesus was with me, even as a young child. I just was so excited about that because I knew that I was one day going to be a missionary and be teaching in another country.
Wow.
There wasn't a lot about talk about the Holy Spirit and the gifts,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was more about the Schofield Bible and dispensationalism. But I'm so thankful that I've grown out of that.
Yeah. Well, they probably gave you a great value for the word. Even
yeah.
if you had to undo some of that particular orientation.
Right. Because I
awesome.
I studied the word and I've memorized the word. That's why I could say so many scriptures. I mean, yes, it's in the King James Version, but that's my early background.
That's awesome. I've grown to appreciate the King James just because it's so much more poetic than modern translations.
My father died when I was 13. So I, in my teenage years, I did not have, my daddy to be there to be a role model for me. As I was in college, I would go to mission prayer band after dinner, and I would get these missionaries from Scotland, and I'd be praying for them.
Oh.
And so that was one way for me to sort of, if I knew my missionary calling was, I was going to do that. Well, it happened that they were going to have a team go to Scotland for the summer. So that I graduated, but I packed to go to Scotland for a short missions trip for 10 weeks. And that was just like, wow, and I just, I kept in touch with the missionaries in Scotland, and I went back a second time. I was able to raise the support, and even the church that my parents were in, because my mom had remarried. He was a widower and my mom was a widow. So it was kind of like a unique fit. And that church, gave me the main support, but I did go and speak in other churches. And I had back then, you had a slide presentation. And,
When was this? Was this in the, would this have been in the
70s? In the 70s. Yeah. I would give my testimony, or I would sing, or I do whatever, what they call the Mound in Edinburgh. And it was like Hyde Park in London. It was the speaker's corner.
Okay.
The day that Jimmy Carter was inaugurated was when I flew out to Scotland as a full-time missionary. Yeah, so there was all kinds of resources. but I became basically the housekeeper for the mission house. And then I'd have to prepare, for any time the missionaries would come in, because that Edinburgh was kind of the main hub, and there was probably about 5 missionaries, several couples and a couple of single women as well. Mm-hmm. And those of us who were single women would come alongside and help the missionary pastors doing children's work, leading classes. And even I did do some women's Bible study as well. So so it was just kind of a jack of all trades, basically.
Yeah, it was and then in Scotland that you met your husband, right?
Right. The Lord knows our weaknesses. He knows where the enemy can kind of come in. I was lonely. It was, and my soon-to-be husband had, his wife had died of Hodgkin's disease. And so he was looking for a wife to take care of his 2 little boys who were 4 and 2. And so, yes, my dad had died of Hodgkin's disease. And so that was kind of like, well, I understand that. Yeah. I can see where the enemy just had, oh, this is really, fits really nicely. I'm going to mess up your calling here a little bit,
So you feel like getting married was a sidetrack of your calling somehow?
To some degree, because because my husband wasn't, he was a newly born again Christian, but he was also an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. And man, that was just really rough.
So he didn't leave his alcoholism when he became a believer necessarily.
No, he hid it.
Oh, okay. So that's double.